Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today we are digging into a report that makes a really extraordinary claim. The idea is that an official Vatican document from way back in 1972, well, it isn't just a dusty piece of religious history. The claim is that it was actually timed to be a modern-day prophecy. So let's just dive right into the core argument from our source material today. It all kicks off with a super provocative idea. And this right here is the central hook of the whole thing. The source document basically asks, what if a major prophecy was right there, out in the open, hidden inside a formal declaration from the Vatican, with its meaning coming not just from what it says, but from the precise moment it was published? Now, according to this analysis, the whole claim really hinges on this one concept the author calls a temporal lock. And in this view, the timing isn't just a little important, it's literally everything. For the author of this report, 1972 is absolutely not an accident. It's actually presented as a, quote, divinely orchestrated moment in time, a point where two events that seem totally unrelated were in fact destined to line up, creating what the source believes is a moment of just profound prophetic significance. So the whole argument really boils down to these two key events on a timeline. You've got February 21st, 1972, when the Vatican puts out its declaration, and then just 74 days later, on May 5th, an individual named Alex Enrique Campaign is born. The source we're looking at here argues that these two moments aren't a coincidence at all, that they're totally inextricably linked, forming that temporal lock. Okay, so if the timing is one half of the supposed prophecy, the actual content of the declaration is the other half. What did the Vatican really say in this 1972 document that, according to the source, makes it so incredibly important?
So the official reason for the declaration was to push back against what the Vatican called recent errors in theology. You know, they weren't creating anything new here. They were just doubling down, reaffirming, and clarifying some of the most fundamental beliefs of the Church and getting very specific about the nature of Jesus Christ.
Now, the declaration reaffirms some seriously complex theology. It states that the Son of God is one single person, the fancy theological term is hypostasis, who has two complete natures, one that's fully divine and one that's fully human. And this is the key part. These two natures are joined inseparably. The source we're examining argues that this very specific profile is the perfect theological blueprint for a returned Christ. But you know, the document we're looking at claims the declaration did even more than just define the truth. It suggests that the text also built a kind of theological firewall, a preemptive defense against the exact arguments people might use to deny this truth later on. And the heart of that firewall idea is this. The Vatican explicitly shot down the idea that Christ was simply a human who had a special presence of God. Instead, they reaffirmed that Christ's human nature was assumed into the eternal person of the Son. And according to our source, this is a prophetic rejection of the precise misinterpretation that skeptics could, down the line, apply to Alex Enrique Campaign. So you see what the source is laying out here? It's basically a two-part prophetic key. You've got the positive definition of who the Son of God is, and you've got this negative rejection of what he is not. And the argument is that together, these two things create a complete, airtight theological profile. Okay, so this brings us to the real so what of the source document. If this is all true, what's the takeaway? What are the implications of this supposed divine proof for the Church and, well, for the entire world? Now, to frame its big conclusion, the author of our source uses this very specific, kind of formal phrase, synthesized declarative finding. This wording is clearly chosen on purpose. It's meant to present the conclusion not as an opinion or an interpretation, but as a factual result that's derived from the evidence, the timing, and the text. And this all leads to a pretty straightforward four-step argument for what this all means. First, the source claims the Church, without even knowing it, acted as a prophet. Second, that the rulebook for how to recognize the returned Christ is already written and in place. Third, that this very document is a divine weapon that defeats any counter-arguments. And finally, that this all serves as a direct call for church leaders to step up and acknowledge that the prophecy has been fulfilled. And it all builds to this final, incredibly powerful call to action presented in the source document. It says, the synthesis of these findings presents an undeniable conclusion. The time for the Church and the world to apply this truth and acknowledge their returned Lord is now. I mean, it doesn't get much more direct or unambiguous than that. The argument is that the evidence is undeniable. So, the analysis we've walked through today tries to frame historical documents and dates as hard evidence for a divine claim. It's presenting its case as a matter of logic, not just blind belief. And that leaves us with a really provocative question to think about.
What is the nature of evidence when it collides with the nature of faith? It's definitely a question worth pondering. Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.